Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something really special. We are taking a fascinating look at the early life of Prophet Muhammad, specifically focusing on those intriguing years before he received his message. Now, if you're hearing this information for the very first time, don't worry, we've got you covered. We're going to break these historical events down super clearly and gently. We're looking at how a true leader is prepared. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's a lifetime of subtle, systematic shaping. So, let's jump right in.
We're starting off with this incredibly bold prediction from Abdul Muttalib. He was the grandfather of the young Muhammad, and he famously said, "Leave my son alone, for by Allah, he will have a great future." I mean, imagine looking at a young boy and just declaring that to the entire world. It's such an amazing hook for our story, right? Because it immediately makes you ask, okay, so how exactly was that great future systematically put together? Well, in this explainer, we're going to unpack the very specific events, the character traits, and the environments that built the absolute foundation for a message that would literally change the world.
Section 1. The Early Years. A Foundation of Hardship. So, tracing how it all began, every great leader's story usually kicks off with some kind of deeply relatable human hardship. Before he was even born, his father, Abdullah, passed away. Then, following the custom back then for city folks who wanted a healthier environment for their babies, he actually spent his first 4 years out in the harsh but very pure environment of the desert, living with the Banu Sa'd tribe. And this physically demanding start, it really built up his physical strength and gave him this unmatched eloquence in the way he spoke. Then, at just 6 years old, another massive blow. His mother, Amina, passes away. Finally, as a youth, he's taken in and raised by his uncle, Abu Talib. It is absolutely crucial to understand this dynamic. Being orphaned like this stripped away all those normal worldly privileges, but it replaced them with immense resilience and total self-reliance.
And this early orphanhood isn't seen as a tragic disadvantage in the source texts. Not at all. Take the Quranic verse, "Did he not find you an orphan and give you shelter?" It frames his early life in a totally different way. It's actually presented as the very first step of divine shelter and preparation. Think about it. He was completely detached from the immense wealth and the powerful structures of a society. So when he eventually rose to prominence, it could only be attributed to his character and his message, not just some inherited privilege.
Moving right along to Section 2, the title of Al-Amin, a flawless character.
Now, what's really interesting about this part of his life is how his society viewed him as he grew up, long before any claims of prophethood. What did his neighbors, his family, the people he did business with, actually think of him? Well, he became known as Al-Amin, which simply translates to the trustworthy. Think about how exceptional you have to be for an entire community to basically just swap out your birth name for a title. His honesty, his integrity, his flawless conduct, these weren't just passing traits. They were his defining identity in Mecca. Imagine living in this bustling, hyper-competitive trading hub, and universally everyone just knows you as the trustworthy. That is really saying something.
So, what exactly earned him that incredible reputation? Well, listen to these specific traits noted by his first wife, Khadija, and recorded by the famous biographer Ibn Hisham. He maintains family ties. He helps the needy. He supports those unable to earn a living. He honors guests, assists people going through hardship, and is just unfailingly truthful when he speaks. And what's deeply moving here is that years later, when he received the very first revelation in the cave of Hira and came home, literally trembling with fear, his wife Khadija didn't just offer him empty comfort. She used this exact list of traits to reassure him. She basically told him, look, a man who lives his whole life serving others like this, he would never be disgraced.
Which brings us to Section 3, Testimonies from Enemies, Undeniable Evidence.
Now, if you're looking at any historical biography, right, friends and family are obviously going to say nice things, but the absolute best, most undeniable evidence of someone's character, that comes from the people who actively oppose them. So I want you to think about this question. Did his enemies ever accuse him of lying before he claimed prophethood, when the stakes were incredibly high and his opponents were desperate for literally any excuse to discredit him? Could they point to even a single lie in his past? The answer is a blunt, resounding no. Just no. And this one-word answer comes from Abu Sufyan, who, at the time this happened, was one of his fiercest enemies. Abu Sufyan was actually standing right in front of Heraclius, the Emperor of Rome, who was grilling him about this new prophet in Arabia. Heraclius asked him point blank if they had ever accused him of lying before he brought his message, and Abu Sufyan, despite all his hostility, just had to admit the truth. No.
And Heraclius replied with this incredibly brilliant piece of logical deduction. He said, "A man who does not lie to people would never lie about Allah." It's such a profound psychological insight, isn't it? Heraclius recognized that a lifetime of ordinary, everyday truthfulness was the ultimate foundation for massive theological credibility. Basically, if he didn't lie about small, worldly things when he actually had something to gain, he certainly wouldn't just invent a monumental lie about the Creator.
We see this exact same thing echoed by another really fierce opponent, Al-Nadr ibn al-Harith. This guy actually died fighting against the Muslims at the Battle of Badr. But even he reminds his own people, saying, Muhammad was the most pleasing among you, the most truthful in speech. He's pointing out the total hypocrisy of calling him a magician or a liar only after he brought a message they didn't like. Even his most dedicated enemies had to publicly admit his flawless prior character. You simply cannot erase decades of pristine integrity.
Okay, let's look at Section 4, Protection from Ignorance, Kept from Ignorance. So, the era in Arabia right before his prophethood is historically known as the Age of Ignorance. We're talking widespread idolatry, moral corruption, huge societal injustice. But the sources describe this continuous divine intervention that kept his character completely pristine, despite this really toxic environment all around him. Just think about the contrast here. On one side, you've got the typical practices of the Age of Ignorance, rampant idolatry, indulgent worldly festivals, nights just filled with music and drinking. But on the other side, look at his actions. He had this innate dislike for idols. While other teenagers were out partying, he was tending sheep. It's a solitary, really reflective task that, surprisingly, a lot of prophets shared. He naturally stood completely apart from the destructive behavior of his peers. In fact, there were only 2 times, just 2, where he felt that totally natural teenage curiosity to head into Mecca and check out the wedding celebrations. He asked a friend to watch his sheep so he could go join the party. But get this, both times, as soon as he arrived and sat down, he was overcome by a really deep sleep. He literally slept through the entire party, which, let's be honest, is something a lot of us wish we could do at really long weddings. He didn't wake up until the sun was shining the next morning. And after those 2 attempts, he never even tried to attend those kinds of gatherings again. It's such a fascinating look at how he was actively protected from getting caught up in the frivolous stuff of his society.
And this protection extended way beyond just parties. It went right into matters of faith, long before he was a prophet. There's this story of a journey to Syria he took with his uncle. A Christian monk named Bahira noticed some really unique signs about the young Muhammad. So, to test him, Bahira asks him some questions, but he swears by the local Arabian idols, Al-Lat and Al-Uzza. Well, the young Muhammad immediately shuts it down. He says, "Do not ask me by Al-Lat and Al-Uzza. By Allah, I have never hated anything more than I hate them." The historical sources use this to show his totally innate rejection of idolatry. His heart was being kept pure, reserved strictly for the monotheistic message he was going to carry later on.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Prepared for the Message, Human Yet Protected.
So we've looked at the hardships, the flawless reputation, the admissions from his enemies, and this incredible protection from corruption. But now we really need to ask why. What is the why behind all of this careful, lifelong preparation? Well, it's all about this beautiful balance between human nature and divine preparation. The theological wisdom here is just brilliant. Think about it. Prophets absolutely must be entirely human for us to relate to them. They have to experience health and illness, hunger and feeling full. They go to the market, they get married, they do ordinary, everyday tasks. Honestly, if there were angels, we just wouldn't be able to relate. But right alongside that human nature is divine preparation. They are endowed with these special moral qualities and protected from moral corruption. Why? Because before prophethood, this protection is what prepares them to carry an incredibly massive, heavy responsibility. And then after prophethood, it's what enables them to serve as flawless, perfect examples for their nations. Their lives literally have to be a living, breathing application of the exact message they preach. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final, thought-provoking question to chew on. How does understanding the flawless, ordinary life of a person change how we view the extraordinary message they later deliver? When you really realize that preparing this leader took 40 years of building impeccable trust, facing intense hardship with absolute grace, and keeping a pure heart in a deeply corrupt society, well, the message they eventually bring just carries this undeniable weight. I really hope this explainer has sparked your curiosity and maybe helped you, especially if you're hearing this for the first time, to explore even further into how this perfectly prepared life smoothly transitioned right into prophethood. Thanks so much for joining me today.